What happens when Britain's morning TV darling collides with a royal who refuses to play by the rules? Viewers expecting another cozy celebrity chat were left speechless yesterday as Prince Harry's interview with Lorraine Kelly spiraled into one of the most explosive live television moments of the year. The morning began innocently enough at ITV Studios. Lorraine opened with her trademark warmth, welcoming the Duke of Sussex to discuss his charitable initiatives and mental health advocacy. Harry, dressed in a casual navy blazer and open-collared shirt, smiled politely, though a trained eye could spot the tension in his jaw and the white-knuckled grip on his chair. For the first few minutes, everything followed the usual script. Lorraine praised his work with veterans. Harry offered polished soundbites about service and sacrifice. But then Lorraine, veteran broadcaster and consummate professional, sharpened the focus. "You've spoken before about the challenges of leaving military service," she began, leaning forward slightly. "How do you reconcile your current lifestyle in California with the values you learned during your time in the forces?" The air shifted. Harry's shoulders stiffened. His voice cooled. "I think that's a rather loaded question, Lorraine. My commitment to service hasn't changed just because I've chosen to build a life elsewhere. If anything, I'm freer now to serve authentically. It should have ended there." But Lorraine wasn't done. With a smile that masked steel, she pressed further. "Of course, nobody doubts your commitment. But can you understand why some people struggle to reconcile your criticism of the royal family and the media with your continued use of your royal title in business ventures?" The audience gasped. For a heartbeat, the studio fell silent. Harry leaned forward, eyes flashing. "You're conflating two different things. My title is part of my identity, just as speaking the truth about toxic institutions is part of my responsibility. I won't apologize for either." It was raw, unguarded, and very far from the carefully scripted PR Harry had perfected. Lorraine's voice softened but didn't yield. "Some people would say that sounds contradictory." Harry's reply was sharp enough to cut glass. "Oh, some people will always look for contradictions. Maybe the real issue isn't me holding on to a titlights that I refuse to stay silent just to make others comfortable." The exchange left the studio audience stunned, social media in meltdown, and ITV scrambling to control the fallout. Within minutes of broadcast, clips were trending worldwide under hashtags like #HarryVsLorraine and #MorningShowMeltdown.for-Lorraine. It was another career-defining memento, reminder of why she's regarded as one of the nation's sharpest interviewers. For Harry, it was something else entirely, proof that even on friendly turf, the battle over his public image is far from won. Lorraine's raised eyebrow was the first warning, sign subtle but unmistakable. She wasn't going to let this slide. "You've made some very serious allegations about how you were treated," she pressed, her tone calm but edged with steel. "And yet, you continue to benefit from the very system you've condemned so harshly." The temperature in the studio seemed to rise. Harry's carefully polished composorso, steady at first, began to falter. His shoulders tightened, his jaw set. Off camera, his handlers exchanged anxious glances, their nervous whispers betraying the fact that they could feel it too. This was slipping out of control. What began as a routine promotional chat was mutating into something combustible, something and everyone sensed the moment of no return was drawing near. "I think you're oversimplifying a very complex situation," Harry snapped, his voice carrying just enough sharpness to cut through the air. "It's easy to judge when you haven't lived it." The implication was clear. Lorraine's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. She knew exactly what he meant she wasn't about to let it stand. Then, like a veteran prizefighter, she pivoted. Her tone softened, deceptively gentle, the kind of tone that signaled a knockout was coming. "Harry," she said, "there's something our viewers find deeply confusing. You've spoken again and again about wanting privacy for your family. Yet you've signed massive deals with Netflix and others to reveal incredibly intimate details of your life. How do you reconcile that? The question landed like thunder. The studio fell silent. Every breath held as Harry's face flushed red. For the first time, his media polish cracked. That's a completely unfair characterization. He bit out, anger slipping through his words. We're telling our story on our terms, not allowing it to be twisted and sold by a predatory press. I bet. You are selling it, aren't you? Lorraine fired back instantly, her instincts honed to precision. You're selling your privacy, your family, your pain for millions, while in the same breath you condemn intrusion. Surely, you can see why people call that hypocrisy. The blow landed harder than any raised voice could. Delivered in her calm broadcaster's tone, it sliced deep. Harry's response was immediate, decisive. You have no idea what you're talking about, he snapped, his voice cracking like a whip. You sit in this studio, comfortable, protected, judging choices you'll never have to make, pressures you'll never endure. You've never had your life picked apart by tabloids from the moment you were born. The audience stirred. This was no longer an interview. This was combat. Lorraine's gaze cooled, her Scottish cadence hardening. I may not be royal, Harry, she said evenly, but I've been in this business over 30 years. I've interviewed people who've faced horrors you can't imagine. They found grace, they found dignity. They didn't turn their pain into a constant refrain of how hard their lives are. The silence that followed was electric. Harry leaned forward, his voice dripping with disdain. Grace and dignity. Is that what you call this ambush? You brought me here under false pretenses. This isn't a conversation. It's a trap. Cheap points, cheap headlines. Lorraine's professional mask cracked, just slightly, as her voice rose for the first time. No one ambushed you, Harry. You came here to promote your work. And I'm asking fair questions about the contradictions in your own words. That's not a trap. It's called accountability. She let the word hang in the air, sharp and undeniable. And for the first time that morning, Harry had no immediate answer. The tension in the studio had reached a fever pitch. Lorraine Kelly's sarcasm about Harry's California mansion landed with surgical precision, and the prince's face darkened visibly. Don't you dare lecture me about accountability. Harry shot back, his voice now booming with such force that every syllable seemed to echo off the studio walls. Where was the accountability when your industry destroyed my mother? Where was it when they hounded her to death and then profited from her funeral? You want to talk about hypocrisy? Look in the mirror. The invocation of Princess Diana sent shockwaves through the studio. Lorraine's expression hardened into something approaching anger. Her practiced warmth stripped away. That is completely out of line. She snapped, her voice carrying the authority of 3 decades on air. My industry. I have spent my career fighting to bring dignity and respect to broadcasting. Don't you dare lump me in with the tabloids you're so fond of blaming whenever it suits your narrative. The personal nature of the clash made the atmosphere unbearable. The studio lights seemed hotter, the silence of the audience heavier. Harry leaned forward, his jaw tight, his words laced with aristocratic disdain. Oh, please. You're all part of the same machine. You pretend you're better, more polished, more respectable, but you feed off the same toxic system. The only difference is that you smile while doing it. Gasps rippled through the audience. Lorraine's eyes flashed, her professional mask now slipping entirely. How dare you, she replied, each word deliberate, sharp as glass. I have built my reputation on respect and integrity. I have never ambushed a guest. I have never betrayed a confidence. I have never cashed in on anyone's misery. If you can't handle being asked legitimate questions about your contradictions, then maybe you're not ready for public life. Harry's response was instant, volcanic. Not ready for public life. He repeated, his voice climbing to a near shout. I was born into public life. I didn't choose the sit was forced on me. And I've spent my entire life trying to serve while protecting my family from the same fate as my mother. If you can't understand that, then you're not the journalist you claim to be. The attack landed, and for the first time, Lorraine's legendary composure cracked. The tension broke like a dam, and the atmosphere shifted from uncomfortable to unbearable. Camera operators kept rolling, their expressions a mix of disbelief and dread. Audience members sat frozen, aware they were witnessing live television. History unraveled. Lorraine rose slightly from her chair, her face flushed with anger. Her voice was low, but razor sharp. You know what, Harry? I've had enough of this entitled nonsense. You come on my show, you insult my profession, you question my integrity. And then you play the victim when I ask fair questions. Enough. The word entitled set Harry ablaze. He surged to his feet, his chair clattering backward. Entitled. He spat, his aristocratic fury barely contained. You've made a living off the royal family for decades. Weddings, births, scandals, you've profited from every single one. And you dare sit there and lecture me? Lorraine stood now too, her Scottish accent thickening with emotion. That is absolutely enough. I've covered royal events because the British public demands it tanned. I've done so with respect. But I will not be insulted by a man who spent the last 5 years trashing the very institution that gave him everything. He has. Everything, Harry roared, his voice cracking. That institution cost me my mother. It cost me my mental health. It cost me any chance of a normal life. And you, sitting in your little bubble, have the gall to tell me I should be grateful for being hunted like an animal by your colleagues in the press. His voice trembled with rage, but before sympathy could form, Lorraine delivered her most devastating blow yet. Your mother, she said quietly, each word like a knife, would be ashamed of what you've become. The intake of breath from the audience was audible through the microphones. Harry froze, his face draining of color before flushing crimson. How dare you? He whispered, his voice low, dangerous, the menace carrying more weight than any shout. How dare you presume to know what my mother would think? The studio was silent, the moment hanging suspended, teetering on the brink of complete implosion. Asterisk, you didn't know her, never even met her, Harry snapped, his voice low but venomous. Don't you dare presume. You're just another vulture making a career out of her memory. The accusation landed like a dagger. Gasps rippled through the audience, but Lorraine didn't flinch. Her expression hardened into something fierce. Unyielding. I may not have known your mother, she replied, her voice steady, measured. The kind of calm that cuts deeper than shouting. But I do know this, she raised you to value respect, to serve with dignity, to put duty above ego. And everything you've done since walking away has been the exact opposite of those principles. The conviction in her words stunned even Harry into a beat of silence. His jaw worked as though searching for a reply, and when it came, it erupted like a storm. You sanctimonious hypocritical, he started. But Lorraine raised a hand and cut him off. No. Her voice carried across the studio with finality. She rose from her chair, eyes locked on his. You don't get to insult me, my profession, this show, and then throw a tantrum when held accountable. This interview is over. Her words echoed, leaving the room in charged silence. Then Harry exploded. Fine, he shouted, ripping the microphone from his lapel. The feedback screeched through the speakers, making several audience members flinch. This is exactly why I left this small, bitter country. You're all the same petty, jealous, incapable of understanding anyone who refuses to grovel at your feet. He hurled the microphone onto his chair. It clattered to the floor with a sharp crack. "Security," Lorraine said coolly, not raising her voice, but carrying absolute authority. "Please escort the prince off this set. My show has standards. He clearly doesn't." Harry froze, as if the words hadn't registered. "You're throwing me out," he demanded, incredulous. "You're actually throwing a member of the royal family off your pathetic little morning program." "I'm not removing a royal," Lorraine shot back, her composure razor-sharp. "I'm removing a rude, entitled guest. Your title doesn't give you the right to behave like a spoiled child." The calm rebuke cut deeper than any insult, and the studio fell utterly silent. Security edged forward. Harry's face flushed with rage, then disbelief, then something dangerously close to humiliation. "This is exactly why we left," he spat. "Because of small-minded people with small-minded attitudes, too trapped in the past to see the truth." "The only thing outdated here," Lorraine replied, her tone cold but resolute, "is your behavior. Now leave, before you embarrass yourself further." The dismissal was final. Harry straightened, fury stiffening his movements, and strode toward the exit with security close behind. Just before disappearing through the doors, he turned back, his eyes blazing. "You'll regret this." "Oh," he warned, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "This isn't over." "Yes," Lorraine said quietly, her words ringing through the hushed studio. "It is." And with that, he was gone. Lorraine turned back to the cameras, her face composed with almost supernatural professionalism. "Well?" she said warmly, as if nothing had happened. "That was expected." After the break, we'll be joined by Mrs. Henderson, who's doing remarkable charity work with abandoned cats. The audience sat frozen, still reeling as the camera cut to commercial. Crew members moved mechanically, their minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. It was clear to everyone present they had just seen television history. A moment destined to be replayed, dissected, and debated for years to come. Lorraine Kelly had done what few dared. She had stood her ground against a prince and won.